Lent is a journey. We start on Ash Wednesday, and we finish first at the cross and then at Easter. We know where we start, we know where we will end. And for many of us, this is familiar territory. Every year, we make the same preparations. We get into our Lenten mindset. We strip away the extra stuff and give up certain pleasures like chocolate or alcohol. And sometimes Lent turns into a bit of a slog, something to be gotten through, with Easter as that shining beacon at the end of the tunnel. Maybe we turn our focus inward and struggle as we try to stick to our resolve to be more virtuous or less sinful or more penitent or less distracted. But each day we put one foot in front of the other as the calendar moves us more deeply into this Lenten season. Our paths may take unexpected twists and turns, but we are all headed in the same direction. And life is not unlike Lent. We all come from somewhere. We are all headed somewhere. We all have a home base. And that may be our hometown, or it may be another place where we've spent much of our lives, or perhaps just an important segment of our lives. And although we don't know how or when or where, at some point in time, our journey on this earth, at least as we know it, will end. If someone asks me where I'm from, I instinctively say California. This is where I was born, spent my childhood. It's where my earliest memories were formed. And so, despite the fact that I haven't lived in California in many years, I still claim it, for good or for ill, as my native land. Just as we all have somewhere that we are from, we also have a place that we are headed to. And this destination may not be named quite so easily. If you ask Jesus where he was from, there is a good chance, I think, that he would say Jerusalem. Now, true, he technically lived in Nazareth, but Jerusalem is where he was presented in the temple. Jerusalem is where he returned and taught. When he was in the desert being tested, it was to the temple in Jerusalem that Satan took him and dared him to jump. And it is to Jerusalem that he has a particular attachment, a connection. He seems to claim it for his own. In our gospel lesson today, Jesus makes it very clear that the place he is heading to, with certainty and some finality in his step, is Jerusalem. His path may have been meandering over the past few years as he preached and healed and taught, but at this point in Luke's gospel, Jesus has made a turn for Jerusalem. And the warnings he hears in our passage today from the Pharisees about some third-rate ruler won't even make him think twice. Jesus is not threatened by Herod's power. He knows that he is on a path that no one can stop. This passage in the middle of Luke's gospel is different from what comes before and what comes after. In the sections leading up to our reading, Jesus is almost always telling a parable or answering questions. He gives advice and he explains and he solves problems or cures the sick. In this passage, though, we get a rare glimpse into his own personal thoughts, his own struggle, his own anguish as he makes his way toward Jerusalem. And you can feel the heaviness in the certainty of Jesus' words in this passage. And if in some Bibles where there's little subtitles before different chapters, the subtitle for this one is read, "A Warning and a Lament." And I don't know about you, but when I hear this passage, I get sort of a heavy feeling in my gut, a feeling of dread and sadness. And maybe it's because we who know where all this is headed are anticipating what is to come. But there's something about the way that he speaks to the Pharisees that telegraphs the tragic nature of Jesus' future. And we don't know if the Pharisees are trying to trick Jesus or not. They've never been particularly kind to him before. But whether their intentions are good or evil is of no matter to Jesus, for he has no intention of listening to them. Instead, he gives them a message to take back to Herod that isn't exactly fan mail. He says, "Go and tell that fox for me, listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work." Now, calling someone a fox, no matter how you might look at it, is not a compliment. And sending this cryptic message to someone who wants to kill you is probably not what Jesus' PR person, if he had had one, would have recommended. But Jesus is past all that. His itinerary is set. He's going to cast out demons, cure some people, and make his way to Jerusalem, because that is where so many others before him have gone to die, and that is what he is going there to do. But he will not die at the hands of Herod, and I think that is why this really fills me with such dread. Not because he's going to die, but because we will be the ones to do it. So what are we to make of this? For us, our hometowns are probably not where we head just in order to die, at least not knowingly. If someone told me that someone in my town was plotting to kill me, I would be running in the opposite direction. And in fact, that is what I find myself wanting Jesus to do every time I read this part of Luke's gospel. It's as though I'm at a movie and I know that something bad is going to happen, and I want to warn the lead character, don't go in the alley, stay out of the attic. This part of the gospel, this is where Lent gets real. This is where I want to somehow stop the action and make it all end differently. And Jesus wants it to end differently as well. We hear him say, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often have I desired to gather your children together." When we lived in New Hampshire, we had chickens. And our first chickens came from a hatchery. And you had them in the little Rubbermaid tub inside with the warming light. And because we raised those chicks by hand, they never had very good instincts about avoiding predators. And we lost several to different birds of prey. So when a couple of our hens went broody, where they want to sit on their eggs and hatch them, we decided, well, let's see what that happens when we do that. So we let the hens sit on their nest, and we found that when the chicks hatched and were tiny, they would stick so close to the mother hen. And when danger drew near, when she saw a shadow overhead, she would stick out her wings and crouch down, and the babies would all gather underneath them, and she could protect them. And the babies learned to run to their mama hen every time they saw a shadow. And eventually, when they grew up, they learned how to seek shelter for themselves. And when they became mother hens, they would do the same thing for their babies. And so fierce was this protective instinct that on one occasion, we watched with horror as a hawk, perhaps unhappy with the fact that his lunch of baby chicks had just disappeared under the wings of a mother hen, he grabbed the hen instead. And she gave her life to protect her children. I'm not sure that she really knew that that was going to happen to her, and that's where the mother hen analogy and our gospel part ways. Our chicken sacrificed herself without much conscious thought. She acted out of instinct, and despite her brave action, her chicks were then left to fend for themselves. The situation with Jesus could not be more different. Jesus walks his path knowingly. Jesus wants to protect us. His city, Jerusalem, is another term for Israel. And when he speaks of Jerusalem's children, he is talking about us. There are foxes about, not just Herod, but many forces of evil. And Jesus wants to be that mother hen that keeps us safe from harm. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. We reject him. We refuse his protection. We scatter like baby chicks this way and that as we chase our own wants and desires. And then, despite our selfish and senseless and sinful actions, he is resurrected and is able to give us another chance, and another, and another. So perhaps as Jesus shifts his focus towards Jerusalem, we might shift our focus as well. And by that, I mean our focus on exactly what Lent means to us. Perhaps Lent isn't something to be gotten through. Perhaps Lent is an opportunity. Maybe Lent isn't about being perfect, but it's about embracing our imperfections. Perhaps if we shift our focus, we might see that even though Lent is about coming to terms with our own brokenness, it is also about realizing with awe and wonder and relief that we don't have to do that work alone. Jesus gave his life for us. And right now, every day, he is there, even during Lent, loving us and redeeming us and protecting and sheltering us, reaching out his arms around us in love. We simply need to seek him out and stay close. Amen.